We'll go ahead and call to order this workshop of the Effingham County Board of Commissioners on April 2nd, 2019, 4:09. And tonight we have a guest with us, Mr. Bill Taney. I don't know if Jamie or the clerk wants to make a special introduction, if you want to share a little bit about your position with ACCG and what you do. But I know the topic tonight is we're anxious to hear about the forms of government, management versus administrative type of governments and advantages and disadvantages. So I don't know if anybody else wants to give an introduction, but you want to say, I know you invited.
I'll say a few things. Wanted to invite Bill. It's my understanding, now that Dave Wills left his position and is now the executive director of ACCG, Bill is governmental affairs or governmental relations.
I am, and I'll tell you when I get to the podium, that just changed, but
Okay.
yes, that's true.
But he kind of fills in. Dave wanted to make sure someone stayed in that role because Dave helped us out a lot on various topics. He come by and he had great insights. He dealt with a lot of counties, and kind of Bill is stepping in that role. And with the county, with Effingham growing needs, the possible chairman and I had a meeting this past week with the Board of Education. A lot of future growth coming. We just wanted to look at all avenues. We don't know if we've been under the administrator, I guess, kind of diagram for a while, or the administrator structure. I don't know if it's maybe time do we look at manager structure, maybe not, but I just felt like no matter what we do, it's always good to get information. We look at all options and we go from there. And I had a discussion with Bill about that, and he said he would be happy to come and share some information with us. And I thought it'd be a good idea. See where it goes.
We appreciate it. I know there's some similarities, but there's some distinct differences and advantages and disadvantages. So, Bill, if you want to go ahead and go to the microphone, and we'll let you. Or if you want to sit down, you can have a mic.
I'll tell you what, I've ridden for a while. I prefer to stand. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the welcome from all of you. I am Bill Toomey, and I haven't even had an opportunity to speak to Commissioner Deloach since my title changed quite recently. Actually, the service of my position will remain the same. But fortunately, the guy who's my boss, Dave Wills, who you all know, most of you know, had already told his predecessor that the job as a one-man band trying to cover the state was about to get out ahead of him, and this was from a fellow that I consider basically the guru in the position. So the idea of expanding this department has kind of been on the table for a while. Got pushed to the back burner, of course, with the course of events when Dave was tapped to be the executive director. But just yesterday, I welcomed a fellow that your attorney may know, and some of you may know as well, but Mike O'Quinn, who has provided outside legal services for ACCG member counties for a number of years. Matter of fact, he defended me when I was county manager in Cook County, and he defended me and my warden when I was county administrator in Sumter County. So Mike is on board as of yesterday. He couldn't make it down to the meeting with me today. We're going to be taking him to several different counties, but we'll have that legal mind on board, not to disseminate direct legal advice to counties. That will still be between your county attorney and our internal legal counsel. But I'm not an attorney, and I welcome that legal mind to my team. The topic at hand, kind of county manager versus county administrator, to some degree is semantics, if you will. Some people use the term interchangeably. I think that's kind of an error to do so, but like so many things, they're gray areas. Let me start by citing Georgia Code Section 36-5-22, and I'm reading from the 2014 iteration. I don't believe there's been an update. But very briefly, the code says the governing authority of any county of the state or the General Assembly may create in or for those counties in which it deems necessary or advisable the office of county manager, and may vest in such office powers, duties, and responsibilities of the administrative nature. And it goes on, of course, and there's some historical sightings there as well. So the legislature does, in fact, recognize that going to a manager form of government is a change in the local form of government. At the highest level, an administrator carries out the wishes of the board, certainly from a policy standpoint, but there is a lot of direct interaction. Some people would term it, and I'm going to wink at my good friend over here when I say micromanagement, and I have no idea what the situation is in Effingham County. But the reason in modern times that several counties have seen fit to migrate away from the administrative function is to bring in professionals who have backgrounds in planning, in particular, zoning issues, those type things, where not only are they charged with carrying out the policy that's made from the legislative function of the body that you comprise, but they are more in an advisory capacity of where you should take the county next. When you use an administrative form of government, the administrator is noticeably subservient to the board. When you use a manager form of government, there's a coexistence, if you will, between the manager on the day-to-day operations of the county and the board. Certainly the manager is always subject to recall, if you will, by the board. Typically managers serve under an employment contract, and you would have to honor the language in the contract. But the manager is charged with the true day-to-day operations of the county. What does that translate into? Often there are exhaustively long agenda when the administrator must come to the board for almost every official action of the county. The agenda typically gets shortened because the manager is expected to handle, to whatever degree he or she is empowered, is expected to handle matters that don't require the direct action of the board. And questions may come to your mind at this point about what kind of actions are you talking about. Actually, you define that. The code section that I just referenced for you does not go into detail to say the manager shall do this or the manager shall not do that. By ordinance, by local ordinance, you define what the powers and the responsibilities are. We will not go into the next code section that I'm going to reference, but I'd like for you to have it on file so that you can refer back to it if and when the time comes. But 50-18-72, if you were to decide to go in the direction of a manager, there are some guidelines. That's a very broad section, and it's not specific to county managers, but you want to read that as it pertains to some of the legal steps, protocols that you have to go through in selecting a manager. Your attorney and I did not dive too deeply into what next steps would be. We wanted to come tonight and kind of have a discussion and certainly have any follow-up that you folks would like to have. Often it is cleaner if you have the legislature empower you to change that form of government. I read to you that the law says that you can do it either way. You're aware, I'm sure, that counties do not have charters like cities do. Some people a lot of times say refer to your charter. You don't have charters. We have enabling legislation, and that enabling legislation morphs. You add to or take from as necessary. So what Lee and I touched on briefly is after the discussion and feedback, if you decide that that's a direction that you definitely wanted to go, I think my suggestion would be that you memorialize it with local legislation. You still do, as I've already noted, you still come back and define it in ordinance. Now, let's talk just a minute about the defining ordinance. You do not have to go to a manager form of government to define the powers of whomever sits in that managerial function. You can further define and assign powers to an administrator. So I don't want you to think that my presentation is that if you decide to, look for a professional of certain caliber and expertise, that in and of itself forces you to go to the manager form of government. It does not. The ordinance is the driving force. You can empower that person to do or restrict them from doing whatever you wish. Have I created questions?
I think so.
Good. That's.
Do you want questions now? Is there anything you want to share?
No. That's my opening foray, and I thought since I don't know exactly what your concerns are, that I would just let you ask questions, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question. For the up-and-coming counties that are growing like ours, is this a trend that you're seeing?
Very definitely. And from a practical matter, and while I was eating lunch on the way down here, there was something on the clerk's listserv that I read about a clerk reaching out for help to her counterparts, saying that, does anybody have the problem with the agenda changing right up to the last minute? What do you do to try to maintain some kind of control on that? And I thought I knew the answer, but I looked to see, and that was a situation where there was an administrator in place, and of course that administrator is obliged, if the board continues to call at the last minute and doesn't observe that cutoff, they're obliged to keep changing the agenda. That would be less so in a management form of government. The manager would make that decision whether something goes on the agenda or not, up until the point of the meeting, and certainly this body has the ability at any time when it's called to order to amend its own agenda. But there's greater control to the point of professionalism when you have a manager in place. From another matter, something that I was discussing just briefly with a member right before the meeting. I've most recently served as administrator in Sumter County. I was there for 7 years. I served a wonderful board, enjoyed being there, enjoyed being in the community. Excuse me. My sinuses are driving me crazy. Believe it or not, the pollen's worse in Atlanta than it is here. When I resigned to take this job, it kind of threw them a curve. They didn't know whether to bring in an interim. They didn't know whether to do the search for the permanent. I made some suggestions, and time kind of flew by. I gave them my mandatory 45-day notice. At some point, they asked me to engage the services of a headhunter. I did so on the county's behalf. That headhunter had several questions that I felt like I needed to be very frank in answering, because you don't want to mislead somebody in the profession to come in. And frankly, in Southwest Georgia, with shrinking population and not a lot of economic growth, it's next to impossible to bring in an administrator anymore. Nobody wants to be at the will of a body that hasn't made things happen so far. It would be difficult in certain situations in some of those counties to even bring in a manager that's really high quality, but it's impossible for them to find what I consider competent administration without changing to the manager's position, where the manager can hire and fire department heads. In Sumter County, I could not hire and fire department heads. We had discipline problem with one particular department, and of course I did what I was supposed to do, and I wrote that individual up. But unfortunately, politics got involved, and when I kind of brought the lamb to slaughter, when I brought that individual before the board at their request, there were crickets. Nobody wanted to do what they had said they wanted to do all along. So now, any power of even persuasion that I had with that department head evaporated, because he knew I couldn't fire him. And he had proven that the board was not up to the task. That particular department became untenable. That would not have happened if I'd had the ability to terminate.
In these scenarios where the city manager would have the ability to hire and fire, what's the process where the board has a say if they thought it was inappropriate? I'm assuming that the board might be appointed as the appeals board, where a department could appeal to the board for a final say.
You may address that in your empowering ordinance. You can be as specific as you want to be. Typically that is not the case, just to be frank with you. Typically, the manager would go through a defined process to find the appropriate candidate, and then before the offer of employment is made, the manager, they could do it in executive session, they could do it in open session. The manager would seek the advice and consent of the board and say, you know, I had 16 applicants for Department Z. I've considered all applicants, we've done interviews, and my choice is Sally Sue over here. And at that point, if the board said, you know, oh no, not Sally Sue, there would need to be some empirical process involved about why not Sally Sue, because y'all would not have sat through the interviews, you would not have gone through the selection process. So, you know, unless it were an urgent situation and not just a political situation, I would think you would want to support that manager's decision. But yes, typically before the offer of employment is made on a department head, the board is consulted.
Sure, I think it's just a good practice when you send the name out and his credentials. I was thinking more of the termination side. If a department head was terminated, this board, you know, if that department felt like it was unjust, what's the process that would be followed? The board be set up possibly as the appeals board, where they, not for hire, but for termination?
I apologize, I misunderstood your question, Mr. Chairman. Yes, very definitely. And that's the way we were set up in my home county of Cook County. The board very necessarily at that point would stay as removed as they possibly could from the day-to-day operation where it came to personnel, for that very reason, because the terminated employee would always have the right of appeal back to the board, and you don't want the process tainted in so much as board members may at that point have to recuse themselves if they've been part of that day-to-day process with that employee. But if they remain out of the day-to-day hubbub of the management of the county, they're a pure appeals board at that point. To give you a practical example of that, in Cook County, I found it necessary to terminate the head of my landfill for cause. I mean, very justified. He came before the board and complimented me in the way that I had handled the situation, and I think it kind of shocked the board. But what he appealed was our policy said that if you were terminated for cause, you were not paid out your leave time, and he had an enormous bank of leave time that under other circumstances would have been paid out. He appealed to the board, and the board actually granted an exception and paid him the leave time. He was not actually appealing the termination, but that was the case, and I felt fine about it. I felt like he had been a dedicated employee up until a certain point, but that's where the appeals process definitely worked.
Mr. Timmy, moving to a management model, do you think that would help us in our search in our current situation? And to what degree? How much difference is it when you're trying to attract the talent that we're looking for to take our county to the next level?
You know, I came.
If I can add on what he's saying, see if this was,
Yeah.
as they're looking at us,
Yes.
and they see administrative reform versus management, what is it telling them that they can do, they could not do an administrative? What kind of you're asking?
Well, kind of, I'm just wondering how much it increases our ability to get the right people here.
Sure.
What are they looking
To
at?
get quality people is what I'm
You folks have a wonderful county, and there's growth already and growth on the horizon. I think that people in our profession, number one, if the board is going to require them to move the county forward and keep the ball rolling, number one, if you can't hire and fire your department heads, your name may be on the paycheck, there may be dual signatures or whatever else, but you keep the politics in an area that should be professional. And the true practitioners know that. That's a sign to a practitioner trying to come into a community that they may not know an awful lot about before they do their homework. So that's a biggie. The other thing is you find quite a few people these days, the profession has morphed in the years that I've been in it. The younger managers that are coming along quite typically hold an MBA, whereas 10, 12, certainly 15 years ago, that was the exception rather than the rule. The worm is turning just a little bit because when I came into the profession, it was aging quite rapidly. You did not see those younger managers coming in. Fortunately for all of us, that trend has changed somewhat. But when you've been through an MBA program and you learn the why theory of management to empower people and lead by consensus, those broad terms, you don't want to be hired into a situation where ultimately to move things forward, you've got to count votes. That doesn't work anymore. That's the old way. Now, let's talk about the negative side of it just a minute. You always maintain the control. If your manager is doing something wrong, or if the labor force is just in total rebellion because whatever the game plan is just doesn't work in the local community, you folks are still in charge. I mean, that manager can't go very far down the line in messing up something that you've designed, you get rid of them. You always have that authority.
So essentially, we're empowering that position to really do its job, but we're not losing any of our empowerment to oversee what he's doing. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And remember that because whatever those powers are granted by ordinance, you can change your ordinance. If for some reason there's something that you either didn't envision or you bestowed a power on that position that it just isn't working for your community, change your ordinance
So you close the loopholes.
at any time.
I can see from the county manager's standpoint, there's a tension here for me today. It's like hiring a football coach and say, you come here, but we're gonna give you all the assistance we want you to have. But we want you to win the season.
Right.
You know, there's a tension of doing that, and they can hire their team that they believe can do. There's a tension with me when you got good folks, you wanna make sure they don't come in and clean house either.
That's right.
And that's the tension I would have with the city manager coming in, you know, just making changes to build a team when we may have a good team. And I'm not sure how that's addressed.
I think you would handle that best in your interview process. I think you make it clear to your candidates that you're not asking somebody to come in. You don't have major personnel problems. You want a new orchestra leader, but people playing their instruments are doing fine. The interview is critical at that point.
I think the right person with the right intentions, they're not going to be the kind of person that's going to dismantle things. They're going to be, if they see a team player on the path, they're going to even empower them. Just want to interfere.
If they have that maturity, then that does allow them to, if they need to replace one or two in a team of 12 people to have a stronger team. I can see as a manager, I'd like that freedom to build a successful team, but we as a board want to protect some
Right,
of
we
the
don't want to
people.
pull the China shop situation,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't think we would have that if we chose the right people.
And you know, the real world certainly is not all roses. We know that. But the newer, more enlightened forms of management even take the troubled employees kind of under their wing and counsel to the point that whatever their good points are, most bad employees are not 100% bad. You know, even the ones we think are difficult. But I would not envision a true professional coming in and cleaning house. But like I say, you can handle that early on.
So those controls that we in place over a city manager type, because I kind of lean that direction, because I like the idea of empowering someone, because we're all very busy folks, but yet at the same time we want quality input.
Sure.
The controls you have want to be your budget. You know, if it's not budgeted, they can't spend anyway, so, and they would go out and be responsible for all the administrative details, the purchasing, to bid it and follow our purchasing policies.
That's right.
You know, we wouldn't, but if they spent money within that budget, whether it was 1,000 or 5,000 or 50,000, as long as it's within the budget and then the policies, we wouldn't be involved any longer in the details of that.
That's right, and not to dive too deeply, we may have to have another workshop on budget matters, but Dave and I actually were counseling another county a couple of weeks ago, and I did this in Sumter County, and it might be a suggestion as well. One of the control mechanisms when you adopt your budget, and this must be done at the time of adoption each year, is to retain control in the object group level. And this particularly came into play with this county and a certain constitutional officer that they were not seeing eye to eye with at the time. And of course, the common thinking is, okay, once that particular office has a budget, a $2 million budget, that's that office's budget to spend each year. Yes and no. If you adopt the budget at the object group level, they can spend whatever is related to salaries and salaries, then all the other non-capital items fit into another category, and then your capital.
So salary, operations, and capital, those three levels.
That's right.
You're not allowed to change between salary and capital and operating.
That's right. That's exactly right. We find sometimes some large capital money budgeted in for those constitutional offices, and they want to pull it back into another category, sometimes salaries, and you want to maintain that control.
Do you have some examples that you can provide to us of county management power documents that other counties?
I do. As a matter of fact, if you'll allow me to, what I'll do is I'll follow up with some detailed emails with attachments. We've got several examples from different counties that do it slightly differently. You'll see the pattern, but be glad to give you examples of those. Sure.
Any success stories you could share with people, counties going through this? It's hard to change a culture. It really is.
Well, that's true. It is, and you're fortunate in that you don't have a fire to put out. Oftentimes, and it's a shame that it happens this way, because one of the first success stories that comes to my mind, and I won't name the county. I don't think they'd like to be singled out, but they really got in bad shape. I mean, financially, and then the morale of the people that were working for the county was just, it was in the pits. And it was an administrative functioning county. I talked to their chairman, and this was before I was on board with ACCG. I just happened to have known him from teaching some of the ACCG courses. And I told him, I said, one of the first things I think you could do is convert to a manager form of government. Give somebody the authority to go in and change the things that need to be changed. You folks, ladies and gentlemen, in that case, kind of back away from it. Let this person do what they need to do and get you back on the right track. It didn't take long at all, not long at all. They were able to pick up someone who had been a county commissioner for quite some time, as a matter of fact, with a good financial background. This guy's one of these people that once he hears a number, it's just kind of in there. He went in and in less than a year, as a matter of fact, he's been there less than 2 years now, but that first budget was a huge turnaround, and you actually had the employees who were about to carry torches and come after them previous to that come to the board meetings and thank them for making that change. That was a big turnaround.
Is there any counties that's gone from the managerial back to administrator type? Is it strictly the other? Most as they grow, counties as they grow larger go towards managerial.
I don't know of anyone who asked to convert back to an administrator. I do know of one county that did go in and amend their ordinance. They felt like there was one particular power, and this was county specific. This wasn't anything general. That there was one specific power that was left open to interpretation. The manager interpreted it one way, and the board interpreted it another way, and they were about to kind of get off kilter. The board just came back and further clarified their ordinance, and everything was okay after that. I was in a manager's office. This was in a more metropolitan county, even though it's in rural Georgia, and I don't think I've seen a manager do this before, but a question came up while we were having a conversation, and this was just this last week, as a matter of fact, and he pulled a copy of the ordinance out of his top desk drawer immediately and began to reference it. And in that case, I think that's a situation where the fellow's taking his job a little too seriously, like he's truly been empowered, he's completely gung-ho. But that is a very unusual and unique situation. And, you know, it's a matter of public record, so I'm not saying anything I shouldn't say here. That's a situation where the guy sued the board to force them to hire him.
To force what?
Force the board to hire him. So it started out,
Getting some type of recurring.
it started out as a contentious situation. So, you know,
Does the board have ultimate dismissal power or
Yes.
termination power in the end?
yes. That's right. Just as you would do with any other employee, if for some reason you were to have a problem, and this goes with whether you have a manager or an administrator, you need to document what the problems are. You don't need to act out of emotion and you know, unless it's a safety issue. I mean, if there's something that's, you know, an egregious safety violation, I would certainly understand, but it matters not whether it's a manager or administrator. You need to document if there are deficiencies.
If this was something the board wanted to move towards, you were saying memorialize it through local legislation. That could put us 10 months from being able to do that.
That's right.
That could us 10 months.
That's right. That does not preclude you from using your powers that you already have under the existing code. But what I would do at that point is follow up with local legislation.
I see.
How does it look if we, you touched on it, you know, kind of the powers in the ordinance, if we did amend the ordinance to where, you know, we said, okay, the administrator would have the authority to hire fire department heads. Does that really hold a lot of weight with a potential applicant, or are they looking?
Get the same form of government, you empower them with management, that's not question I had. Did you empower them with management?
Or is it, I mean, does it strictly have to be, they want the manager? I mean, as long as we could show them, hey, you're going to be empowered to do these things, I mean, does it still carry the same weight?
I think that's a subtlety, and I'll use myself as an example, and then I'll give you a real straight answer to it at the end. I was hired as the administrator in Sumter County. They didn't know me and I didn't know them. I came in, I think, fairly highly recommended, and I guess the way they looked at it, they were kind of taking a chance on me and I was taking a chance on them. The conversation after I had been there about 2 years was, you know, we really ought to change our form of government to a manager. And if we were sure that you would stay here, there wouldn't be a problem. Well, I considered that a compliment, certainly, still consider it a compliment. But that's not the way they should have been looking at it. I agree that they should have gone to a manager form of government. Excuse me. But in that case, we had one commissioner who just didn't see it that way. And I had a great relationship with that commissioner, just like I did with my other four. As a matter of fact, he was very supportive of everything that you know, I wanted to do. He just couldn't quite just give it up and let that title be done. So the chairman came to me and said, look, here's the deal, and I'm not going to call a name, but right now, if we were to call a vote, it would be a 4-1 vote. We can do it. You call the shot. You say whether we want to go that way or not. And I told him no, because I didn't want to just throw egg in the one person's face because they were so adamant about it. About a year before I left, that one commissioner came to me and said I was mistaken. I don't know what it was. I thought that I was giving up. I've become more educated on it. Do you want to go ahead and let's do it? I told them, let's talk about it at the upcoming retreat, and if we decide to go in that direction, if you're still the same frame of mind, let's do it. Of course, I left before the next retreat came, so, and after I left, and they were trying to decide what to do, and they called the headhunter in. The headhunter told them that he would not accept them as a client because they were not a manager form of government. He declined to search for them. He said, you know, I just, to do my job as a headhunter, you're not empowering me with the tools that it's going to take to get a good professional person into your position.
Bill, that's what you say is all well and good, and I can understand what you're talking about. If you get a bad manager, if you get a good manager, you're all right. But if you get a bad one, we just went through that. We had an administrator thought he was a manager, and we didn't know what was going on half the time.
Right.
He didn't work as an administrator. He worked as a manager, and we still have stuff we have problems with that he did. We knew nothing about it. Still don't know about some of the things still come up.
Right.
So it didn't do us no good to have even an administrator because he didn't pay attention to what he was supposed to do.
Well, and that was going to be my point, actually. It sounds like, and I'm not speaking against the person personally because I don't know much about that person personally, but for whatever that title was, it sounds like y'all got shortchanged, in my opinion, because a good manager does keep the board informed. It's not a matter of withholding information from the board, it's being able to go ahead and act and keep the board informed about those actions. Y'all need to be informed. I don't care what you call the position. It's, you know, it's mismanagement if you're not, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, without expressing an opinion on that particular subject, I agree that you can have mismanagement in a manager or a county administrator.
Without a
That's what I'm
doubt.
saying. We had an administrator, but he thought he was a manager. So, I mean, it was just, it didn't matter what we had, he did the same thing.
But the issues are not that so much is that, because that's, you gotta handle it the same way either way. You gotta remove and replace no matter what.
Right.
I think the key we need to look at is what's the best form that operates well for us as a county. I'm trying to list the things I think I hear you saying, that there is the ability for the managers looking at building and controlling staff, department heads.
Right.
They will feel like he or she will feel like it's crucial to them being a successful manager and administering the policies of the county. By not having his hands tied. I hear you say that it will limit some politics that will happen in administrative form of government, because when we were smaller, you know, we did the audit back then, we had chairmen over different areas like roads, fire, and they were deeply involved because that's the size we were, 12, 15,000 people. And
That's right.
Now, what you would not want is someone going to the commission and saying, I don't like what this administrator's doing, he's doing this. You know, I think it takes some of the politics out of it, which I think is a positive for us. Doesn't mean we don't have final say and control.
Right.
But it should take some of the politics when they realize they have to respect he or she who is in position. If it's a legitimate complaint, we as a board will still oversee and control. So it takes this politics. I heard you say gives more professional input. I know a lot of times we've had previous administrators who would say, hey, I'm just here to do what the board wants me to do. And I would say, that's not what I want to hear. I want a recommendation. I want you to argue it. I want to hear what I need to hear, not what I want to hear.
Right.
You know, and I saw that previous administration when they say, I'm just here to do the bidding of it. You know, I don't want you to pass the buck. I want you to take responsibilities within the realms of the ordinance that we established and give us some strong recommendations. Do we loop or don't we loop? Do we build or do we, you know, whatever it is.
Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right, because in the case cited here, when somebody's patent answer is, I'm just doing what the board asked me to do, then when they do something wrong or incorrect, to the other people that have been listening to that chatter for a while, it almost sounds like they did it because the board asked them to do that. It gets very muddled and confused. But when you've got a man or a woman that's the manager, the buck stops there. If they did something wrong, they did something wrong. They didn't do it because y'all told them to do it.
Yeah. And then I see the daily operations with an agenda setting would be beneficial to the board. Those are some of the dangers I think I heard you share that the manager might be looking for if they were going to apply for a position with us. The controls we would have, I hear you say the budget, this ordinance, which would be key to establish some kind of general policy of what we would expect, as long as you operate within these boundaries.
That's right.
We're not going to come slap you in the hand or embarrass you or whatever. I think seeing some of those policies or ordinances that would be helpful to us to kind of get an idea of what it looks like.
I'll be glad to get those to you. And as far, you want a metric built into it. You want some way to measure. And again, this would be whether it was manager or administrator. I don't know. I've not read your personnel policy, and it may not be appropriate to address it in your ordinance, but certainly in your personnel policy, I would suggest to you that you have a periodic evaluation of either the manager or the administrator. That's usually a difficult thing to do. That's almost micro-politics, but you're doing yourselves an injustice, and you're doing the person in that position an injustice if you let something fester.
I have one more question. You might know, because in municipal, when I was a city manager, I was over the clerk. I'm not sure in this environment that I would appreciate that aspect. Would the county clerk still report directly to us, or is there anything issue there?
Again, your ordinance addresses, generally the clerk reports to the board.
Okay, good. I like that.
They are there to help administratively, usually with the manager, especially in a small shop. But I have never worked in a situation where the clerk did not report directly to the board.
Very good. That's good. You don't want to change the structure there.
One other question. In your opinion, is there anything we can do now in the hiring process that would increase our chances of getting a quality person we're looking for?
If you're willing to tackle at least that first foray of an ordinance after you review what I send you, again, an ordinance can be changed virtually at any time. You may want to go through a public process there or not. This is not one that would require it. But I would consider go ahead and putting that basic ordinance in place and pointing to that in the interview that you are in the process of refining what those duties will be, but as evidence of the direction that you're going, here's what our ordinance currently says.
And Bill, if you want to email that to me, I'll distribute it to everyone.
Sure, absolutely. And I will, Mr. Floyd, I will further research your question about whether anybody has kind of reversed engines, just to make sure that I'm on point with that.
I'm just curious, in our population, is the population grows, it sounds like most are going to.
They are. And we actually are in the process of doing a follow-up survey of all the managers and administrators in the state to see what their compensation packages are, what their benefits are, whether they work under contract, what's the duration of that contract, some of those variables. That information should be available by the Savannah conference. So we'll be glad to get that information.
I'd be curious also, what's the largest county that's still, as far as population, that still has the administrator? I mean, we're at what, 60 something now?
We're probably going to come in around 65 to 70 on the new census, but there's a study out there that we're waiting on final numbers that says we may go to 25 to 30,000 people in the next 6 years.
Wow.
So I'm just curious what that?
The last census we were at 56, I believe. 58. And if we look at the building permits, not just the county, but I know there's been 3,300 in the last 10 years. That's about the water system we have to do, and that's just in the south end. That didn't count the ones in the north end. And you do that times the 3.2 or whatever it was the census did, and you get somewhere from 65 and 70 now. So if you have 30, you're looking at 95 to 100 in the year 2025. And so we have a lot of challenges.
I'll say you
We're going to
do.
need some professional input, not just someone that says, whatever the board wants.
Yeah. No, that's, that ship sailed somewhere. I don't know where it sailed to, but it sailed. And I'll get this follow-up information to you that I promised, and y'all don't stand on ceremony, any of you. If you've got follow-up questions, your clerk has my contact information. Commissioner Deloach does as well. Push them out to me, and I'll be glad to follow up with you.
This has been very informative. Thank you so much. We're going to take a 5-minute break and come back at 5:05 for the board meeting. That's okay. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the workshop.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Your motion from Mr. Deloach, and there's
Second.
to adjourn. Any motion? Okay. Let's choose the ready?
Yes, sir.
We're going to call to order the Effingham County Board of Commission meeting for April 2nd, 2019, and the local time is 5:10. I'm going to ask if everyone will please rise for the invocation given by Attorney Deloach, and we will remain standing as he leads us in the pledge of allegiance.
Dear Lord, thank you for our many blessings that we have. Thank you for everyone gathered here this evening. Please be with us, Lord. Help us do your will. In your name we pray, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we are so blessed to live in a great country. We have our freedoms. Never get tired of the pledge. Item number 4 is consideration to approve a resolution for tonight's agenda. Have any additions or corrections from our clerk, please?
No, sir.
Do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion Mr. Kiefer, second Mr. Deloach to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And it carries. Item number 5, consideration to approve the minutes of the March 19, 2019 regular commissioners meeting. I have read those minutes.
The minutes are wrong, and I was just looking at it.
Okay.
Michael Zala, public hearing number 13. And it's got Michael Zala for the second reading, and it's got Brad and Susan Smith in it. So that is wrong, Brad is completely wrong.
Brad and Susan Smith, it should be who?
They're in the second reading for Michael Zala.
Give me a page number, Mr. Walker, please.
Yeah, what's the correction that we're asking for?
It's public hearing number 3. On that 13 was the one, Michael Zala.
What's at the top right, page number?
Oh. Page 12.
Page 12,
Page 12, middle of the page is Michael Zala.
okay.
Public hearing
And the
13.
name should be what? What's the correction? I'm asking what the correction is.
Brad Smith and Susan Smith does not need to be in the second reading for Michael Zala, which has nothing to do with Michael Zala.
So the correction is remove Brad and Susan Smith? Is it?
I need to find what was right.
Give them that so she can find it.
Get it right now. That's the first reading, and then the second reading, you got Brad and Susan Smith.
There was a second reading, I think, from Brad and Susan Smith, though, right?
No, this is in Michael's.
I know, it just got, it just got.
Oh, it's a copy and paste thing. huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, but just keep,
That's all it
So
is.
it's a
Yeah,
typo.
just give us the correction and we'll get it approved. What's the correction for the record?
It would just be Michael Zoller instead of Brad and Susan Smith.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the minutes with the correction of removing
Brad and
Brad and Susan Smith from item number
14.
14? The motion?
So I make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Mr. Lopez, got a
The
second.
exception.
With the
Correction.
second, Mr. Floyd, for approving the changes, or the change. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, no. And carries. Thank you. All right. I want to welcome our public tonight. Good to have those who are here in attendance in the meeting. Ask you to keep your comments if you could to the agenda items only. And then if you keep comments for 2 or 3 minutes, if you would like to speak, we'd love to hear from you. Always interested. That allows everyone else to have an opportunity to speak. All the documents are located in our clerk's office and on our website, so I hope you get a chance to look at the support for the agenda and prepare as well for tonight. And that brings us into our appearance. We're just a minute or two before that, but we have an appearance from Christine Ferman. Did I pronounce that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, is she here? Is that you? Okay. If you'd like to come and share with us what's on your mind tonight.
Good evening. On behalf of my neighborhood, Royal Oaks Plantation in Guyton, I would like to request for the board to take into consideration the service from Atlantic Waste to provide waste pickup from, yard debris pickup.
Okay. Are you familiar with what the current processes are for yard waste pickup?
They currently offer it for Chatham County. That's all I know. I know that we share the same company, Atlantic Waste.
Yeah,
So it's just an
they pay a lot
additional-
more than Chatham County, $45
Right.
a month, and we pay like $15 or $16 a month. But currently, are you aware that you can place those leaves and small debris into your regular canisters?
It would take several weeks for them to pick up just one yard pickup.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're aware of that. That's one thing we did negotiate with them. Originally, you could not put any yard waste into those canisters, and now we've negotiated you can do that.
Right.
So, if you have a pile of leaves and you want to put some this week, some next week, that's one way to get rid of it. For the smaller areas, the larger ones, you can call and they will come out and they will, look and see, like if you had some limbs you cut up or some other items that you wanted to be hauled away, they'll come out and they'll give a price. We have felt like in the past, that's a better way to go for our citizens than having a regular charge that they never use of $15 or $20 a piece for a whole, for a year. Whereas it may cost you $20 or $30 to do that, but it's a one-time thing for those one-time issues.
Right.
That's another option you have. And then I'm not sure if you're aware, but landfill does take all of your items, recyclable, that fit in the can, or leaves, or limbs, and I think it's like 8 cents. And that's what we do with ours in my house. We don't burn it, we take it
Right.
there, and they'll have it for 8 cents a pound. I don't know if you're aware that we have some things in place.
Yes, sir. I did call Atlantic Waste, and they told me about that service, the one where they'll come out there and give you an estimate on how much it will be to pick it up. And then the other one, I'm okay because I have a truck, but I know that a lot of my neighbors do not, and they can't take it to the recycling center to dump.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll certainly look at that in future contracts. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts or questions or comments. Hope that helps a little bit, some options, and we'll continue to look at how we can. We improved a little bit 2 years ago when we negotiated this contract. We could put some, in the box.
Yes, sir.
But we'll continue to look at it. Thank you for coming, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
So much. All right, we'll move to item number 9, which is our consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. I'll read through that and we entertain a motion. Item number 1 is consideration to approve to renew the contract for inmate commissary services at the prison with McDonald's Supply Company for a 1-year term from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. Item 2 on the consent agenda is consideration to approve to allow the lease agreement with LP Mailing Solutions for postage meters at various county offices to automatically renew for 1 more year. And item number 3 is consideration to approve to review the agreement with vendorregistry.com for online vendor management services. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kiefer, second by Mr. Burdette to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed no, and it carries. With that, we move into our old business. Item number 1, consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Gary Rowe, MEGR LLC, to rezone 44.4 acres out of 161.38 acres located on Sand Hill Road from AR1 to IR1 for a surface mine map 299 parcel number 65 in the first district. This is the second reading.
Make a motion to approve the second reading.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Floyd, second by Mr. Deloach to approve the second reading. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed no, and that carries. Item number 2 under old business, and then we cut down here for just a minute. Consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Clifton Hall and Deborah Starling for a variance to allow a 30-foot easement to a landlocked parcel located at 2092 Highway 17 North, map 269, parcel number 20 and 23 in the 3rd District. Do you have a motion to approve the second reading?
Make a motion to approve the second reading.
Motion by Mr. Deloach, second by Mr. Kiefer to approve the second reading. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. It carries. The last item in old business is consideration to approve a proposal and issue a contract to New South Associates Incorporated for an archaeological mitigation study for the proposed Effingham Parkway.
Good evening, Fiona Charlton, purchasing agent. I'm unsure what was discussed at the last meeting regarding this, so do you want me to go through the whole thing again?
No, I don't think so, as the board is. I think the question was, we weren't taking the lowest bidder. And we weren't sure, before we pulled the trigger on that much higher bid, is there a reason why we would not use them if they qualify under VPD or DNR, whatever it is, and they can do it timely? Because our feeling is we're not concerned so much with anything but them getting it done.
Moreland Altabelli reviewed all of the proposals, and they helped us to make the decision to go with New South Associates. New South Associates have a very strong relationship with Georgia DOT, and they've done a lot of work like this, very similar work, and they've got it done on time. So Moreland Altabelli recommended that we use them, or they advised us, I shouldn't say recommended, that was their advice to us, to use them as opposed to any of the other bids that we received.
I understand that the question would still be that we have a local bid that's approved by DOT also, that company. Is there any reason why we'd be concerned they could not complete this project in a timely fashion?
There's no reason that we would be concerned that they couldn't complete it, no.
So that's kind of where I was, just what we're saying, if we can spend $60,000 less and get the project done. But obviously,
That's 60,000, might save us $1 million or $2 million on construction costs.
That's what I'm concerned
Exactly.
on getting mired, with,
I hear you, but that raises the question, if we want to flex fine, but you have a firm that's approved by DOT, there's a time frame that the project has to be complete.
They're not all approved by DOT.
No, the lower bid that could be this bid that lower, is there another firm that's approved by DOT? And I didn't know from looking out today, if somebody had some specifics, you need to use this firm because this firm has never been on time, this firm is not, it's a problem.
I spoke with the head of, I forget his name.
Elementary.
Level detail. And from what I gathered, not only did they have the best relationship with DOT, they have a reputation, they have more professionals on staff that are regarded highly of DOT. There was just no question after having a conversation that these were the guys to go with. If we want to get this done on time and get it done correctly. It might save us a little money in the interim, but overall, it's going to save us a lot of time and money. If somebody does something wrong on this, and also that, we had a question also about grave sites.
Grave sites,
About grave sites. And I asked you about that, and I even talked to the field engineer on that. It's 99.9% sure there's no grave sites involved. They can do everything with that bid, get this taken care of, and get us moving forward. I highly recommend we go with these guys.
The ones that they recommend by staff.
Yes, look at
Yes.
this.
New site.
Yes, recommend.
I think because this is a service contract, and our policy, we don't have to take the lowest. We can look for the value, and I do believe there's value in this particular project with this particular item to get it moving.
And I emailed some notes too.
Yeah, I read that.
On that conversation, and Mr. Mitchell also followed up with some notes on that, detailing everything. Very thorough. And I had the same questions, and I was skeptical as well.
Well, I'm not sure on that page, but I trust you from my colleagues. I appreciate your input.
We did discuss this in our,
We did.
our last meeting a long time about the graves and
Yes,
all this
sir.
stuff.
And you guys tasked me with reaching out.
Yeah, because that was one of the concerns we did have when we were bid. They wanted so much for grade. If there's no
Yeah,
grade,
that's right.
then their bid would be still
It
substantial.
costs us a fortune. It costs a lot more than that.
In the 60,000, when I brought it, if that was the case. After speaking with somebody that's on site, there's in the driving way that we're willing to move through.
Sure. So
There's
that's one of the reasons on this board, and I would definitely agree with that. So with that, we have a motion.
the commission to approve alternative one.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Burdette to approve alternative number,
One.
I'm on the wrong spot. Burdette for alternative number 1. Who's the second? Mr. Kiefer, that's the second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Any carries?
Thank
The
you.
guy that was not on this program, I will take a second.
No, I appreciate the input. Just make sure our clerk's got that. We have Burdette as the motion and Kiefer as the second. Okay? All right. That concludes our old business. We can move to new business. Item number 1, consideration to approve a final plat for Kendall Shays subdivision located on Low Ground Road, consisting of 4 lots, zone R2, map 372A, parcel number 4. So we have someone taking the lead on that? Says Teresa.
I have information on that. Basically, all the information is that a decade or more ago, these were subdivided, and then they were recombined, and then recently they've been subdivided again. And in that interim, this used to be considered a minor subdivision because for, I think, up to 10 lots, but in the interim, you all decided that 4 or more lots was a major subdivision. So when the engineer came in a few months ago to ask me to sign the newly split plat, I couldn't sign it, which set their timetable back a little bit, and they had to reformat the plan, the final plat, and
And they do that, and they comply now.
they comply now.
Okay.
And you're satisfied with this?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's 4 lots on Low Ground Road, there was no infrastructure, it's just, it's simple.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Approve alternative number 1.
Number 1.
A motion by Mr. Lopez, second Mr. Keith, to approve alternative number 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And it carries. Item number 2 is consideration to approve and implement a non-discrimination policy. Related to genetics.
Huh? Genetics, yeah.
Genetics.
During a review of our policies and all, we saw where we did not have a policy in place for the Genetic Information Discrimination Act. It's called GENE of 2008. So what we've done is put together a county policy to comply with this. Basically, in a summary, what this act does not allow you to ask for genetic information nor use genetic information when making employment decisions.
I would have never thought to ask for genetic information in the decision, but anyway.
Sometimes you get it by accident, if depending on your insurances and things like that, but as a general rule, you're not supposed to touch it.
Any questions? Any motion to approve alternative number one?
Make motion to approve alternative number one.
Motion Mr. Lipper, second Mr. Floyd to approve alternative number one. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no.
Thank you.
Carries. Item number three, consideration to approve and execute a proposal from EOM for sewer system field data collection, lift station drawdown test.
Fiona Charlton, purchasing agent. Consideration to approve a proposal from EOM for sewer system drawdown test, which will be conducted at 13 of the county's 23 lift stations. In addition to determining the system's capacity as it relates to the proposed Jasper Village development, the test will also determine the feasibility and cost of updating the existing sewer model. Upon completion of the test, a summary report will be provided to the county with findings and recommendations. The proposal fee is $16,900. As there are funds available in the current budget, staff recommend alternative one. Any questions?
Michael, this is part of that modeling that you asked us to commission to do a while back. Right? The whole sewer system is just one portion of it?
That's correct. The water model came.
I think they have this.
This was proposed at the same time as the water model. The water model went through the approval process. The ball got dropped somehow, I guess, on our end as far as the sewer. So it's evaluating the capacity of the lift stations in essence, so we can draw some conclusions. Jasper Village was one of the areas. So we looked at what we thought was the highest risk lift stations and evaluate the capacity and determine if they need to be upgraded for future growth.
Any other questions? Have a motion to approve alternative number one?
Make the motion to approve alternative number.
Motion Mr. Floyd, second Mr. Kiefer to approve alternative number one. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And it carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number four, consideration to approve to submit an application for 2019 fireworks tax grant.
Good evening, Christy Carpenter, Finance Director. We're asking for approval to submit an application for the fireworks tax grant. The requested amount will be $8,892, and if awarded, it will provide 13 multi-gas air monitors for the fire department. There's no county match, and staff recommends alternative one.
Any questions? Do I have a motion for alternative one?
Make a motion to approve alternative number one.
Motion by Mr. Kiefer, second by Mr. Floyd to approve alternative number one. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And it carries. Item number five, consideration to approve to submit a grant application to the Hospital Preparedness Program, HPP, for emergency disaster events.
Yes, sir, we're asking to submit this grant. If it's awarded, it will provide emergency treatment cots. They will be stored with EMA, but they'll be able to use them either in a treatment facility that we set up or at the hospital in the event of a disaster. There's no county match on this one either, so staff recommends alternative one.
Is there any fault where these mattresses and beds will be stored so rats don't eat them?
My understanding is EMA storing them.
Yes, that's correct. They'll be stored out at our 911, excuse me, our 911 center.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve alternative one. Second.
Motion Mr. Loper, second Mr. Burdette to approve alternative number one. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And it carries. Item number six, consideration to approve an amendment sanitation resolution for tax year 2019 regarding recycling.
Mr. Chairman, you all will reference the folder I just handed you. there is a revised sanitation resolution. The revisions are being requested due to the changes, the nationwide change of what's considered as recyclable. So some of the commissioners and staff did have a meeting with Atlantic Waste to determine how we can go about continuing to accept those items that are considered or has been considered as recyclable. So the changes under the resolution are as follows. The previous rate for sanitation services yearly for residents was $200. That change will be $215 per year, which amounts to be about $1 per month. The additional change is under an additional recycled cart. That fee is going to change from $48 to $60 per year.
Just give a little background to commissioners who may not be familiar with this proposal request tonight. We did meet with Atlantic Waste with our staff. Christy was there. Christy, I think you were there too much. There was a couple of staff there I know that talked with, and I think our administrator was there. Looking for a solution to our recycle issue.
We have someone coming in that probably wants to do that.
Okay. Yeah, Vince, I'm coming to you, maybe have some thoughts. But, you know, this has changed. China and others are not buying recyclables, so nationwide this is an issue. My wife beats me up all the time when she gets a tag on her cart that says, I can't eat in this cart because it has glass in it, or it has something that's not acceptable. So we talked with Atlantic Waste and said, if you took all the recyclables, because one day the hard plastic may be recyclable, one day the glass may still be recyclable. There are some places that may take this, and what if we kept the same recyclable material so we don't have to reject that container and get people calling us. And he said, you know, looking at the tonnage, we looked at that, we came up with a price of around $1 per month. We added 25 cents, so it's $1.25 per month to cover the administration, the other services we provide in sanitation, because we had an increase in quite a while. So it's $15. So I said, so you mean I can tell my wife if we're going to pay $15 annually, we can put any plastic, glass, paper, cardboard, it don't matter what in that container, and whenever we get a sticker, she'll hug the mail. And so we thought it was worth bringing to this board to see if you agree that that's a good solution for our constituents. $15 more a month, a year.
And that's everybody in the,
All 1,800 customers where we have, I'm not sure, it's 18,000 customers we have. And they can pay this and they'll never get a sticker on their card that says we can't pick up your recyclable today.
well, I don't want to have to pay $15 extra month, because I don't use it.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, $15.
Yeah, $5 a month. So that's the formula. Any thoughts or questions on this?
Yeah, this is, you impose this on every citizen?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fee, everybody has a recycling card.
Right.
Okay? And what's happening now, every citizen, and they're going to monitor they put the future contract, the tonnage. If you pick up, based on the tonnage, this is what it costs them to say, yeah, we'll take all that.
So they'll take anything you put in there that's recyclable or used to be recyclable.
Yes.
We just wait through all this to amend everything, to make it to where you would take a glass and.
But they're still doing it, they're still, for instance, to give you an example, again, at home, my wife was putting glass in her cycle just less than a month ago. So maybe you can do glass. She said, yes, I can. I said, no, you can't. She goes right here on the brochure and she'll reference no glass. So as much as we've been telling folks, and I'm on the board of commission, and she's still in the glass. So,
But we now we're doing it right.
yeah.
And now you go back and do it again, it costs $50 more a year, which is nothing really.
Exactly, and then my thought is that when it changes back and there is a market for glass or hard plastic, we don't have to change anything.
So what do they do with it?
Well, there are folks who will take it, but it's costly, but we'll let the recycle folks worry about whether they can get a market for it or not. But to me, it was a good
Stops
solution.
the calls of people being aggravated, their car they get done.
Yeah.
Because I've had quite a few of those calls.
So they'll empty it now and go.
Laughing there, it's like I'm not programmed getting out.
The recycling in the market's just so volatile.
Right.
I mean, the trash itself, I mean, the landfill fees are pretty much set, that's easy to manage, but it's to recycling, so
Mark,
I'd be glad to pay 15 if they would take a plastic bag around it, instead of just dumping it in the thing. That's
Yeah,
what I ready to do.
they will.
They will?
You put a plastic bag around
Okay,
it.
I'm good for that. That's aggravating.
Ben, am I right?
Yes.
You can put it in a plastic bag, you can put it in a paper box, it
You
don't
can put
matter.
a paper box, plastic bag, you can, we're not gonna take just straight garbage. Like when you see that somebody's got just trash, they've got all kinds of food, they've got construction material, we're not gonna take that. But if somebody's made the honest attempt to try to recycle and it's bagged in your like Glad garbage bag, and it's got a pizza box in there, then that's okay, we'll take that.
Before they rejected it because they had food, now they won't.
Yeah, now we're not. We're not gonna, if it's in the can, we're gonna dump it.
Okay.
Pretty much unless it's just, you got a bunch of yard debris or something.
Just keep it.
That was our feeling, that constituents really appreciate
That'd
that.
be great.
Well, we're having to deal with this with every municipality. Like I said, it was in the newspaper Sunday. The city of Savannah is having to do this. They're not even trying to educate folks. We've tried to educate folks, and be honest with you, Effingham is probably doing the best, but we're still getting we're probably getting 75 calls a week in our office about why we didn't pick you up, and we asked them, did you have a sticker? And they said yes. But why didn't you, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna get picked up? I've still got this. And they don't wanna throw all their trash into, or all their recyclables that they don't know is trash back into their can, and they don't wanna wait for 2 weeks. And so this would just eliminate all of that.
And our trash is still about half the cost of Savannah, so.
Yes, you're doing great. If you wanna look at the city of Savannah, they're charging their customers $36 a month.
So when will this be effective, and how will we educate the community?
Well, there's two questions there. How do we educate them on that? The other is, this won't go into effect on new tax bills, I guess, we don't have a way of collecting it. So hopefully, help me with
That's
that.
not quite done.
Come on, turn it.
Help us know how we get between, we start this, say, in May. How would we not lose the rest of this year?
If you want to start it in May, the new customers who come in for sanitation for the first time will pay that new rate up front.
Correct.
And that'll be prorated. And then the tax assessors will be notified of the change and it'll go out on the bill. So your existing customers, you're going to lose that, but your new customers will pay the new rate with whatever effective date you choose.
And I'm thinking that's another reason why we talked about the quarter a month, because it would cover some of those vacancies in the laws, the administrative costs has gone up. That'll keep us from having much loss for the next 4 or 5 months.
Yes.
Or I guess it would be 7 months,
It'll be-
actually.
Right. The rest of this year. You won't start getting your tax money until, December, January.
But I think it would make our constituents happy, so we need to make sure they know they're getting a little bit of free coverage right now.
They are.
Okay.
Well, we
Any more
can
questions?
start, if y'all agree to it, we can start it, and I think we can start tomorrow if you want to start it tomorrow.
Can we start tomorrow and bill us January, and we can actually put it on our tax bills?
Can do that.
Can we split it?
I don't think we can do that. And I talked to the lady about trying to, since Effingham is so good, can we get a little bit of a discount? And she said, no. They I don't know what. Anyway, they don't want to work with us too much. But we can start tomorrow, and I'll tell the guys, I don't think we've sent out, April, we haven't sent out April's bills.
So-
Yeah, we haven't sent out
So
April's
start
bills.
tomorrow,
Yeah, we
and
can start.
change your bill June 1st.
I'll prorate it to where it'd be like, whatever, 80 or 92 cents or whatever it is for the month or
And
whatever.
then just start billing us May 1st.
That's fine.
Yeah, we need time to get the word out. So people can
Did you spec it for Mike and say that, please, that's fine?
We will start April 1st, picking up everything that is in a recycling container, whether it's contaminated or not, unless it is absolutely undeniably contaminated with some sort of thing like sheetrock or lumber 2x4s that are stretched out, or it is just
Just
Plastics you pick up.
paper, plastics, glass, pizza boxes, styrofoam, garden hoses. Let me think of what else goes in there that people think is recyclable. Shoes, clothes, all that stuff. It'll get picked up. And they will attempt to recycle it they will separate it, sort it and everything, and they'll have more trash at the recycling facility than they had before.
And we'll start getting billed, you said May 1st for that?
Yes, sir. We can start at May 1st.
Okay. We're gonna start picking up in April.
Wait a minute now, wait.
I thought you said we start tomorrow and we bill May 1st.
Well, I was going to bill in April for April.
He's wanting a month.
I'm trying to-
He's wanting a month free?
This is costly.
Well, you know, it's probably going,
Several weeks to even get people.
what you do is you just start from what it won't be that you educate the folks. What you'll be is just, you won't be denying the service to the folks anymore.
Like a cold opening.
Yeah, it'll be a cold opening.
And I'm suggesting your cost will not go up that much in April anyway, because people are gonna still put, for the most part, just the things we've educated on. It's gonna be gradual, but your cost will.
Yeah, the gradual, once they start seeing that they can get away with all the stuff, is when they'll, you know.
Come on, Atlantic Waste, you could say May 1st, give us some,
I'll give you a month.
all right.
It's going to be clean for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's okay.
It'll be clean for a week or two.
So when and how are we gonna put something out so they know?
As far as, are we going to put something else that now you can put glass in there? We can, I guess if you wanted to, you could send out the same envelope that you send the bills out to. You can put a flyer in there. You can throw in glass, and you can throw in plastics 3 through 7 now if you'd like. You could do that.
Yeah, we got so frustrated, we just throw it away in the trash and just a little bit of recycling.
That's the way most people have gotten. They've gotten to the point, you know.
I think,
It'd be nice to use it.
the biggest, it'd be nice to use that advantage, but the biggest key is they want no longer those stickers.
Yeah, you know, we talked about getting stickers of saying, hey, here's what is and is.
They do take these type of traditional recyclables and.
Yeah.
And you're still gonna have people that don't do the right thing no matter what you do. I think you'll have more people.
Well, let's get with Mr. Billy and our clerk and see if there's some way we could put something in, maybe in the paper or something, just, the county is negotiating with their provider in ways to pick up recyclables based on the previous items that was picked up.
Yes.
Hopefully this resolves a lot of the difficulties and concerns
The
that.
citizens, I think, will be much happier, and I know the people in my office will be happier without getting all those phone calls. And service folks are having to go back and pick up the one lady, that lived in Clio that didn't recycle properly.
Any other discussion?
It happens all the time.
Regarding this, approval of amendment to the sanitation resolution, any other questions or discussions? See, alternative one is to approve the revised resolution, do I have a motion?
Supposed to approve all number one.
Motion by Mr. Whitford, and I heard Mr. Wood second that motion to approve alternative one, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And it carries. And I do want to thank Larry for working with us on that and giving us that month. Thank you, sir.
When will the pickup people know that it's okay?
One of the people, they will know tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow morning. I'll text them tonight.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for working with us on that. Item number 7, consideration to approve a purchase and sale contract between Effingham County and Robert Arnold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been negotiating with Robert Bruce Arnold, owner of property at 216 Shady Oaks Drive in Guyton, which is a landlocked piece of property surrounded by other property owned by the county. We do not have the original agreement. Mr. Arnold has been traveling. When I first talked to him, he was in Texas going to California. He was supposed to return on Friday, but he didn't. And he's in Virginia, tells me that he'll return tomorrow. But in any event, I'm requesting that that the commission authorize the chairman to execute the attached agreement for the purchase of this property. It will serve the purpose of enhancing recreational opportunities at that site, and also provides a potential source of significant enhancement to the county's water system. So the options are to acquire the property for $25,000, approximately 3 acres, or to reject it. I might add that he has signed an electronic copy, but we do not have the original, so hence the request to authorize the chairman to execute the agreement subject to receiving the original document provided by Mr. Arnold.
And that
I'll
is
be happy to
alternative,
answer any
and
questions.
that is alternative number one. Any questions regarding that?
Lee, did you draw this agreement?
I did.
Should have said that, I'm sorry.
That's it. I'll make a motion to approve alternative.
Second. Commissioner Mr. Floyd, who I know is excited about the opportunity to move forward with some things out there in this district. That's good. Second by Mr. Burdette, to approve alternative number one. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir, for working on that. Item number 8, consideration to approve to pay for Musco Lighting for lighting services for Red Field and Morgan Complex.
Yes, sir, we have a loan with Musco Lighting for lighting at the Reddick Field. The Reddick Field Fund still has $57,927 remaining for payment toward this loan. And we would like to also use an additional amount from SPLOST Rec of $39,885.30 to go ahead and pay it in full instead of taking the 5 years. Doing so will save us almost $7,000 in interest. So staff recommends alternative 1.
7,000 interest and a lot of headaches that we have to worry about each year.
That's right.
What's the interest rate on it currently?
I may have to get that for you. I didn't bring it with me. Oh, yes, I did. 3.45%. And it's currently over 5 years.
Okay, any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve alternative number one.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Logan, to approve alternative number 1. Second, Mr. Deloach. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, that concludes our new business, and we'll move to our reports from administrative staff and city commissioner staff. So,
I have nothing for this evening, Mr. Chairman.
anything from my clerk? Okay, how about this? Anything from planning and zoning, anything from finance or fire?
2 weeks from tomorrow,
I'm sorry. Thanks, sir.
Just an update, 2 weeks from tomorrow, ISO will be in here doing their evaluation. So it'll be a few months after that before we actually receive them, but they will be here in 2 weeks.
Are we thinking we might be looking at a little better ISO?
Based on our preliminary calculations, we're shooting for that 3. Yes, sir.
How long, just curious, how long does that take? I mean, is that?
The evaluation, they sent us all the paperwork up front, so I started it about a week ago, and
Or I guess how long will they physically
be here. He should be here 6 to 8 hours.
Oh,
But then it takes 9 months to a year to not get your response.
We're hoping they've streamlined the process a little bit to hurry it up.
That's very good. Thank you, sir. All right, do we have anything from any of our commissioners?
we're at, should be done in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. I knew people had been.
I got an update from Clyde Dyson, because this past Sunday was this Sunday breakfast over in Guyton, and I just got an update from him, and he said that basically all the cleanup should be done in 2 weeks.
People are excited about that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I've got something I want to update the board on. I'll try to make this as quick as possible. I've talked with some of you at different times about it, but it involves the Board of Elections office. As you all know, at some point, we're going to get new machines. These new voting machines are going to be larger. Our Board of Elections, they need more space than what we currently have now. And currently 4-H is housed together with Board of Elections. So going forward, Board of Elections needs that whole building. And they think long-term wise, that's what they need. They have the whole building, they'll be good there. So that leaves the question of, okay, what do we do with 4-H now? Well, our original plan was to put them out at the annex, the old private school out on Highway 119. And the information I'm giving you goes over the course of many meetings with staff behind the scenes. Abby Smith and I had met with Jimmy Parr and Fred. And basically we originally last year had $300,000 allotted in capital projects for the renovation of that 5,500 square feet. Well, what we were going to do with the bathrooms and what it was going to take was definitely going to be more than $300,000. So what I talked to, and this all started because the chairman tasked me to look into this project. What we're looking at doing, just to provide us some more time so we can find a long-term solution for 4-H, is possibly rent some space from the Board of Education at the old Rankin Elementary School. This, like I said, this is not a long-term option. This is, Dr. Schrauf said that he would be willing possibly to lease us the space for about 2 years. That's as far out as he would commit to, just because he's not sure after that what the plans are for that building, which I think a couple of years that would buy us a little time to figure out what we're going to do with 4-H. Abby Smith is fine with this. She has just asked whatever we do next is going to be a long term. She's not excited about moving, but she understands the situation we're in. We're on a strict timeline with board elections because once they pick out which voting machines are coming, things are going to be in motion. And we just want to be ready for the 2020 election because with the new machines, board of elections is going to have a lot more time to get trained in these machines. One thing I did not account for is you may be asking, well, what if we move board of elections somewhere else? It is extremely expensive for us to move board of elections because of the mail outs, notifications to the public, and my personal opinion, and like I said, we have not voted on this yet, but I'm just bringing it on to speed, but just my personal opinion is I didn't want to have any issues with, since the next election will be the presidential election, I didn't want to have any issues around that. That's just me personally. So, also, and I'm sorry if I'm going through this too fast because it's a lot of moving parts here. I talked with Stephanie, our county clerk, and we also need space for records. So, if we get 4-H out of the Board of Elections office, we can check that box. Board of Elections will be taken care of. Our records keeping, we can use that out at the annex building. Basically for store records, we really don't have to do any type of renovations there. So low cost there. We can move 4-H temporarily to the old Rankin Elementary School. I'm currently waiting, Dr. Schraus committed to get me some type of rental agreement this week. I'm going to forward that to Lee to let him look over it. Dr. Schraus told me probably what he would do is charge a flat fee per month, which that would take care of anything custodial, that would take care of utilities and the monthly rent. I think that may be a little cleaner for us, just paying the flat fee. We use prison inmates for a lot of our custodial uses, but Dr. Schraus has stated that they do not allow prison inmates on their property. So we would need to use their custodial services, whoever they're using. I just think that would make more sense since they're already there. So with all of that being said, I'm hoping before some point next meeting, I will have the agreement. I will be able to send it to the attorney, and next meeting we'll have something to have a further discussion on the actual agreement and what we do.
Did he give you any numbers?
He did not. I mean, this is something we really have not have not done before. I just told him, he's already mentioned it to his board. His board is okay with the concept of what we're doing with the space, but I told him that, you know, I would need him to give me some type of agreement so our attorney could look at it, and then I would have something more complex that I could bring to y'all, so we could actually have a more in-depth discussion. But I just wanted to give y'all an update now for the next meeting. And just my personal opinion, this would help take care of two things up front. This would help take care of Board of Elections, and this would help take care of some of our storage needs that we have. And then after this, I think we can focus on, this will give us a small window, because 2 years go by really quickly. This will give us a small window to where we can focus on what we do next with 4-H. And
A left field question, the property that we have at Board of Elections, is it expandable at all? Build onto that, no, perhaps not now, but maybe later, I don't know.
It's low in the back.
yeah, it's lower back.
On Keel. It may be, They made a parking lot on, there's another building there, but they tore it down for parking, because they needed a lot of parking also, so.
So I'll tell you all that to come to my tonight's question. I've been in pretty consistent talks with Olivia Morgan, who's over our Board of Elections, and her request is it okay on her side of the building, because as y'all know, it's kind of split, Board of Elections on one side and 4-H is on the other. Well, there is a wall on the Board of Elections side that she knows is going to be torn out to provide a more open concept, that is what she's going for.
This is from Olivia saying this?
Yeah, this is on Olivia, this is on the Board of Elections side. She's already spoken to Fred. Fred is okay to move forward, but of course, he wants the board's blessing on that. If they went ahead and tore the wall out, it would not disrupt 4-H. Olivia's trying to get everything she can done now to save time on the back end. And Fred said he could do it, but he just wanted our blessing on it. As far as funds, we have $65,000 in the budget for it, for the renovation of that building. I think, Christie, I think.
We have it under the annex.
Okay, we have another
It's under
annex.
that same 300,000.
Okay, and we have the other money that was originally put towards the annex. We have that money that I guess somehow will, I don't know, move around or do something to.
That total was about 300,000 for all of that, right?
If some of that has been spent, I think you have about 285,000 left.
Yeah.
So funding is there. Right now, it's just taking down a wall or two, but like I said, it will not affect 4-H at this point. I think, in talking with Dr. Scharouse, I think summer school is over, I think the last day of June. And Abby Smith with 4-H said that summertime would be more convenient for her to move from one location to the next. So it seems like our schedules would line up with summertime.
Is there any money going to have to be spent for Abby at the school? Is that good to go for her to move into, or they?
The only thing she has asked is she would like some of the rooms painted. And Dr. Scharouse said that was fine. I mean, but of course, that would be on us. She doesn't think, she's been out there several times, looked at the space. She doesn't think there needs to be any type of temporary walls or anything like that, which, of course, that makes it easier with the Board of Education side, because that's really not a permanent change to the space.
Yeah, we don't have any space. I just asked.
No.
I know there was talk before, but I forget where it was.
Right now,
It was the old school.
Central School?
No, the annex. But there, just the restrooms are not.
Okay, gotcha.
right now, with this scenario that I'm talking to you about, everybody seems to be happy on board, which
How much recycle?
really, it's really surprising, because I mean, we're dealing with different departments. But I will say Abby's been really good in dealing with this.
Well, she's been requesting for a while. I talked with her back when she's been working with Steve and whoever after her.
Well, if we can do this, really move forward, it helps Abby, once again, for summers when she needs to do it. So when I was talking with her as well, I said, we'll try to get this approved before May so you can start planning maybe in June. So
But I guess question for tonight is, I mean, do y'all have a problem if Fred or our folks start doing some demolition on the Board of Election side? I mean, it doesn't affect 4-H, and like I said, Olivia's just trying to get as much done on the front end as she can. Because they're kind of in limbo on when the machines are going to be purchased, when they're coming, and she's just trying to get as ready as she can.
When Fred gets time to do it.
So any other question? Again, I hear the board kind of nodding that do let Fred move forward with that, and let the board give us that contract, and we hoping it's going to be pretty much for cost. That's kind of what I'm hoping. Since we're partners in this community of care, so we're not currently using, so hopefully it'll be pretty nominal. They got to cover the utilities, the maintenance, the AC repairs.
She's partially funded by the state too, right? In that department, where that, is that included fund finance? That's the state staff. Isn't the 4-H in that partially funded by the state?
Yeah, it's the Board of
Yeah,
Regents, University of
University of
Georgia.
Georgia.
We provide the facility.
Okay, so okay, I got you.
Okay, so.
I think,
So I'll get with Fred on the Board of Election side, and at some point, I'll get the new agreement to lead, and we'll try to get that on the agenda for next meeting. But I just wanted y'all to kind of have all of that before I threw an agreement in front of them.
just know this sets the ball rolling, this pretty much sets definite ball rolling for 4-H. They're not going to be, so we have 2 years.
Yeah, so we have to come to the solution. We've got some working on.
Sure.
And we'll be, working on those and clarify those in the next couple of months, so. Very good, good report, very clear.
That's all I have.
I had one thing, and I wish, I didn't know Mike Kim was going to leave. I have some residents on, off Long Pond Road, in a subdivision. I believe it's a new subdivision, I don't believe there are any homes in it yet. Timber Preserve. Timber Creek Preserve. Anyway, there are some existing homes for the first floor, but they're having some issues with the driveways, with the new road that was put in, and I just need EOM to kind of step in and help check that out.
We're gonna be meeting with them Thursday morning. If you give us the information, we'll try to.
Yeah, okay, I will.
We'll try to get some answers for you.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, I didn't, driveway issues?
Yeah, there were 4 existing homes built, and they utilized what was an easement. And with the development, the main entrance has obviously become that easement. So there's some driveways that tie in, and they don't believe their driveways were left anywhere near where they were prior to putting that road in.
In terms of the standards of the driveway?
Yeah, just quality, yeah.
When they put the road, the driveway should be returned to the same
That's right.
condition.
And I've looked at it, and I don't have a good idea of how it was before, but I just don't remember how it was before. So I'd rather from an engineering standpoint have them look at it. They would have the construction documents from the development to look back at, make sure it's not.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay, I understand we have a need for executive session tonight. Okay, we have a motion for an executive session.
Make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personal property and pending litigation.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cooper, second by Mr. Gillette, to go into executive session. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, we're in executive session. Back into regular session.
Make a motion to go back to regular session.
Okay. Motion was by Mr. Lowe, second by Mr. Lowe. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. It carries. Do you have a motion to approve the executive session minutes?
Make a motion to approve executive session minutes as presented.
Second, I'm going to notice of March 19th. So a motion by Mr. Deloach, second by Mr. Burdette. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And those minutes are approved. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Lowe, second by Mr. Lowe to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Who was that? Wasn't that you, Phil?
That was
To
good.
adjourn.
Okay, it was Phil.
Did you get it?
Phil was the second.
And adjourn?
Yes,
All opposed.
No, I didn't make
it was Phil.
it.
All right, Phil.
I knew you do it, but you